Hey everybody, Jonathan Fields with Good Life Project. So my guest today is my good friend Leo Babauta, and he is a blogger, best-selling author, a fanatic about simplicity and really exploring the way that people live their lives. And he's got a pretty incredible personal story of not only personal transformation, but also global change and moving his entire family to a very different place. So we're going to do a bit of a deep dive into those journeys together. Awesome to be hanging out with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And we are hanging out today also. I should comment, we are at another friend of ours, Jesse Jacobs, we're at Samovar Tea Lounge in San Francisco right now, which is a really cool little setting and a regular hangout of yours.
Yeah.
I don't know if I should be revealing that, your secret spot.
I love coming here just to connect with people like yourself. You know, it's a great place to hang out, have some great tea, but I also come here to write.
Yeah.
So if you see me with a laptop, don't bother me. I'm focusing.
Just totally stay away.
Yeah.
So right now I know you're very modest, so you probably don't like me saying this, you're one of the world's top bloggers. You've been doing it, I guess, since about 2006, right?
2007.
2007.
Early 2007, yeah.
Right. Developed a massive following, written one book traditionally and a lot of other books yourself,
right.
Been publishing them. I want to talk about that, but first
Sure.
I want to take a big step back with you because you've got this crazy journey of personal change.
Yeah.
So right now we're hanging out in San Francisco. That's not where you're from or where you grew up. So take me back to Leo in a past life.
Leo in the past life. When I started Zen Habits, I was on Guam. So that's basically where I grew up and was living all my adult life. I lived here when I was a little bit younger for a little while, but Guam is definitely home. It's where I had all my kids.
Right.
So I'm married with 6 kids.
Right.
And I think the story you're talking about probably started in 2005 when I was overweight. I was a smoker. I was sedentary, addicted to junk food, deeply in debt, like crippling debt.
Yeah.
Just couldn't change any of my habits. A lot of stuff with work and productivity, procrastinating.
Yeah. What were you actually doing back then?
At that time, I believe that was when I was working for the governor of Guam. I was a speechwriter.
Okay.
Government job, pushing paper around. Actually, It was really, in the communications division of the governor's office, you work long hours and just really like a ton of stuff. You're like overworked and working weekends, and I had no time for my kids. So that was one thing, is I realized my life was upside down. The things that were most important to me, my family, I had the least amount of time for, and spending the most time doing the stuff that I hated the most.
Right.
So yeah, it was not a good place. And I really felt stuck. Like I couldn't change any of my habits. I would try like a diet, try to like lose some weight, do it for like a week or two, and then fail, and then just feel really guilty about it, feel really horrible about myself, and my belief in myself really started to decay, and so that I really didn't think I could do it.
So what about the people around you at that time? Were they living a similar lifestyle, or were they people that would have supported some sort of like major attempt at change?
Yeah, well, the family around me, I mean, it depends on who you're talking about, but I think just the majority of people live a life where you're like eating really unhealthy food all the time, like huge amounts of it. Definitely on Guam, but I think that's true a lot in the U.S. too.
Yeah, no, totally true.
Yeah, a lot of fried foods, junk foods, sweets, sodas. Beer and just, not that I love beer, but you drink too much beer and it's not good for you.
It's an excess thing.
Yeah.
It's not right.
So anyway, it was just, and then people didn't really exercise at the time, at least in my life, and a lot of smokers in my life, and that's just with health. People also get stuck in jobs they don't like.
Right.
And you just feel that's your life.
I don't know anything about the economics or the economy in Guam.
Yeah.
Is it a place where there is opportunity, or is it kind of like sort of a limited?
There's opportunity everywhere, but I mean the biggest jobs are the military, government, and tourism.
Okay.
So I mean there's opportunity to like create your own business and do your own thing, but most people work in the government with jobs they don't really care about, doing work they don't care about. Or the military, or
So you're just kind of following along the path of everybody else.
Everyone else was doing the same thing, and you learn that it's just the people around you really have a huge influence on what your life is like. We got some tea here.
Ah, looks so beautiful.
These are two of my favorites.
So what are we drinking today?
Green ecstasy, which is obviously the yellow one.
Okay.
Yeah, this is a green ecstasy. It's a really high quality Japanese sencha tea that we serve. It's one of my favorites. It has a really nice savory quality to it with like a buttery aftertaste.
So the green ecstasy's got, I think it's the Nishi First Flush in there.
It's Asamishi sencha.
Okay, and it's mixed with matcha powder, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's got like a mixture of two different kinds of greens, a sencha and a matcha, which I kind of like. This is like mixed with some beautiful herbs, like it's got the turmeric spice, which is really healthy for you, but it's also got like ginger and licorice. Cool. But you gotta let it sit for like a couple minutes, and then it gets like
I love how everything's just kind of like slowly melting down from the top.
Nice visual.
Anyway, let's go back to your terrible life.
Yeah. So look, this is the kind of life that I'm surrounding myself with now.
Right.
People who are inspired, doing cool things, a healthy life full of like delicious, beautiful things.
Right.
But at that time, my life was completely the opposite, and I think the people around me, not to criticize anybody, but that was just the norm, was an unhealthy life doing work you didn't like, being hugely in debt, shopping for pleasure, eating junk food for pleasure.
Right.
And really not knowing how to change any of that.
Yeah. And I think you keyed in on it also, where it's like the people around you play, I think we don't even realize that community you surround yourself with plays such a huge role in the way that you live your life and just sort of the things that you assume away without even making decisions about it. You just kind of like go with the community.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you find yourself, maybe down the road saying, wait a minute. So what happens to sort of just start to make you question what's going on?
Well, there was one thing is I realized that my life was upside down. And one of the things that was a turning point for me for that was I had this huge speech to work on. It was like the State of the Union kind of speech where you work like long hours. You're there all weekend, basically from early morning to late at night. And my kids had a soccer game. And I really wanted to make it to that game.
Yeah.
It's really important to me to be there. And I was really trying to rush and get my work done just to get out for like an hour or two.
Yeah.
And I couldn't. I didn't make it, and it was just I had to call my wife and say, I can't make it there, and I'm really sorry. And she was disappointed. My kids were disappointed, and I was really disappointed in myself. And I realized this is not working. Yeah. Like to live a life like that, where I was super stressed, trying to like just make one small commitment to my family, and I couldn't do it.
Right.
So.
But you've also got to feel. I mean, you've got 6 kids.
Yeah.
So you've got to feel a certain amount of financial pressure too. Like, maybe I don't love my job, but I have a job.
You have to put food on the table.
Right. It's doing what it needs to do.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a big thing. I mean, it's different if you're a kid or if you're 20 years old and you don't have any responsibilities. But for you, there's a lot more calculating that goes on.
Yeah. I mean, you have huge responsibilities. Put some food on the table, have a roof over your heads, and that have some clothes on your back. Yeah. I mean, that's basic needs that you're providing not only for yourself, but for other human beings who are like depending on you, who couldn't make it without you. So yeah, it's huge pressure actually. And the thing was, I was failing at that too. Like I was in deep debt. I was struggling to make it from paycheck to paycheck. Sometimes I couldn't even make it, and I had to borrow money from family and just constantly like getting deeper and deeper in debt. I had creditors calling me, and I would ignore their phone calls. Bills were piling up, and I would show them in a drawer because I didn't want to deal with it.
So even on that level, it's not working.
I wasn't doing well financially. Doing work I hated, not paying the bills. And one of the turning points for that also, something that really stuck out in my mind, was there was this time when we needed to buy like milk and bread or something basic like that, and we had nothing. And I had no money in the bank, like a negative balance in my checking account. I had no money, and I went into my closet where I had my kids' like coins, and I stole from their piggy bank to buy food. And I just felt like I had just failed as a father. Stealing from my kids to make it. You said you were going to make me cry this early, but it was a realization that was not working either.
Yeah, it's a tough moment.
Yeah,
and I got to imagine there are a lot of people actually over the last couple of years, no matter where you live, who've also, a lot of parents who felt that. And felt like you're boxed in also, like, wow, what more can I do? I'm working as many hours as I can work.
Yeah.
And that alone is, creating a lot of pain for me and my family. What do I do?
It's really tough. And so for me, there was a turning point when I finally started to figure stuff out. But it wasn't just like overnight, like, aha, I figured it all out.
Yeah.
It was little changes, step by step, learning how to like deal with all of these problems, the people around you, the feeling, the self-confidence issue that you can't, feeling that you can't change, not having any time to do any of this stuff, having to put food on the table, and still wanting to make other health changes and financial changes, things like that.
Right. So what did you start with? What was the...
I had been trying to change a lot of things all at once, and I realized that wasn't working.
Yeah.
And so I said, I started to learn from all my mistakes. I'm like, I gotta figure something out because all this is not working. And I had tried to quit smoking 7 times and failed. And so I said, you know what? I'm gonna finally succeed at one thing, and I'm gonna make it smoking. Because I felt that was the worst problem in my life. Like I knew that was killing me. I couldn't stop.
Yeah.
It was also, I think, influencing my kids. You might not smoke around them, but the smoke gets to them.
Right.
And it also makes it very likely they're going to be smokers when they're adults.
Yeah, because you're setting the role model. I mean,
Right.
you're sort of like, and they're going to, no matter what you say, they're going to look at you and model what you do.
Yeah, kids who have parents who smoke are much, much more likely to smoke when they're
Right.
adults. So I didn't want that. I knew that would kill my kids.
Yeah, what was the age range around then?
I think my oldest was probably between 12 and 14.
Yeah, so that's right at the age where they're kind of like really
Yeah.
starting to experiment a little bit also and watch.
Yeah. So it was, she was 12. And actually, we didn't have our 6th one yet.
Okay.
So anyway, it was, I knew that was the worst thing. But I also realized now, knowing more about habits, that was probably the worst thing to start with. Because it's one of the
hard,
hardest
right.
to change. And it's not that you can't do it, I did it. But I now recommend people start with easier habits and learn how to change the habits before you tackle the hardest stuff.
Right.
But anyway, I decided to tackle it. And I said, in the past, I said, I did things like deciding that I'm going to quit this morning and just do it and not tell anybody and just like decide to do it today. And I realized I was like half-assing it. And so I needed to go all in. And so I put myself fully committed into this one change. And by fully committed, I mean really committed. Like I told the world that I was doing it. And I set a date, not today, but in the future, like 2 weeks in the future,
Right.
November 18, 2005. And I made that date
that the
really.
exact date?
That's the
So
exact
you
date.
remember that, yeah.
It was a big day for me.
Yeah.
I marked it on the calendar. I made out a plan. I figured out all the things that had caused me to fail in the past. I made a list of all my triggers. So I spent like a few days just writing down everything that triggered smoking. I did a lot of research. I read like every piece of literature I could on how to quit smoking, how to change your habits. And I just made a list of all the things I was going to try out. I went on a forum, got to know, a smoking cessation forum online.
Right.
I got to know everybody there. I committed on that forum. I formed a new community online.
Yeah.
I had accountability partners and someone to support me if I was having a hard time. I developed all these strategies. I was all in.
Yeah.
It was like, and this is the one habit that I was going to change right now. I wasn't going to try and commit to a whole bunch of things.
Right.
I was going to say, if I'm going to commit to this, I'm going to really commit to just this, and let's see how to make it work. And I told like everybody at work, all my family, and I made a promise to them. I made a promise to my wife and my daughter, and I said, I promise you that I'm going to quit. And having that kind of promise, like that motivation, really motivates you. Because even if you fail, you're going to keep trying.
Yeah.
And so I learned how to change that habit. And for one thing, it was a success, which I had not had.
I mean, did it surprise
that
you that
point.
you were able to do it, or were you at that point like, this is so different, I'm so committed, I think I will succeed, or was this sort of like?
I think there was always a doubt that I was going to make it. I really went all in. I told myself I was going to do it, but in my heart, I think there was doubt.
Yeah.
And when I made it, it was like slapping that doubt in the face, like, you're nothing, I don't need you.
Yeah.
So anyway, I changed that habit. I quit smoking, and then I decided to try running to replace smoking as my stress relief habit. And
Right.
so I started to apply the same things that I had used for quitting smoking to starting running. And it worked. And that was a revelation to me, was that it doesn't just work for quitting something, it works
For starting
the same
something.
things work
Right.
for any habit. I mean, habits basically have the same kind of mechanism, and I started to apply it to eating healthier. Eventually became vegetarian, then vegan. Started waking up earlier so that I could go running and have time for that. Started like writing and all kinds of stuff. Anyway, it was by the end of the first year, I lost 30-some pounds. I ran my first marathon. I had been waking up earlier. I was deeply cut into my debt, so that I was making huge progress.
So this all goes down in the course of a year, which is kind of a stunningly short window of time for that level of change. I'm curious also, so you were talking about your debt, your health is changing. How does this impact your relationship with your wife?
Yeah, well, the first thing that it impacts is anything change that you make is going to impact the people around you, including especially your wife, right?
Yeah.
So I had to get her on board. That was one of the best things that I did early on, was get her on your team, because otherwise if you're making changes, people often feel threatened by them. Like you're attacking their lifestyle. Even if you're not telling them to change, you're telling them that they're wrong by what they're doing.
Yeah.
But I asked her, I'm like, I really need you to do this. I can't do it without you. And this is really important to me. I'm really unhappy with the way that I've been, and I want to change, and I need you. And I'm really lucky that she said yes, and she was totally on board. So that was one of the major things. But simplifying, I also simplified like my clutter and my time. And simplifying my time was something that she loved, because then now I had time for the kids and her.
Yeah.
We started to go on dates and have time for each other.
So how does that, where does that time come from? Because if you look back, before you do all these things, you're probably thinking in your mind, I've got no time for anything. I'm working like crazy amounts of hours. I can't show up for my kids, for my partner in life, and my body's like, I don't have time to exercise, I don't have time to do this. And all of a sudden, you essentially find time all over the place. How? Where does it come from? Because so many people have that same, they have that same place where they're looking at their life and saying, I would love to do this, I would love to do that, I'd love to go on dates, I'd love to, but I'm already working 1,000 hours.
Right.
How do you create that?
The first thing is learning to let go. We all have the same amount of time in the day, but it's just we have filled the day up with all of these things that we think we need to do, like commitments. One thing, I was coaching soccer because I thought that was important for my kids. I was on the board of the PTO at my kids' school because I thought that was important. But I realized that I was spending time doing stuff with other people instead of the actual kids. So I realized if I let go of those commitments, even though I thought they were important, I have time then to actually spend with people who are important to me. So you learn to let go of commitments and say no to things so you can say yes to the things you really want that are really important to you. So I had to, sometimes it's simple as like just an email saying, I can't do this anymore. I don't have the time. And you feel like you're going to disappoint people, so you don't want to say no to them. But you know what I learned? Life goes on. They figure it out.
They'll find somebody else, and then you'll get your time back.
Sometimes you have to you finish out a commitment. So I had to finish the soccer season before I could say no to the next one. And sometimes it's really hard because people really want you to stick to what you've been doing. My work wanted me to do stuff, all the time that I had to learn to say no to them. And at one point, actually, I quit my job because they weren't, we renegotiated my work schedule and they weren't sticking to that. So I quit my job.
They kept wanting to keep re-intruding in it.
Yeah, I got another job. This was working for the Guam legislature.
Right. So I want to actually pick up from there, but shall we?
Yeah, let's do it. So these are getting a little cold. And we should pour these too. But this is, I think, a really nice tea because it's a combination. You taste the matcha in there? It's kind of settled to the bottom. By the way, I'm not a good pitchman, but you can find these teas online at samovarlife.com. Just because I don't want people to watch us drink it and then not feel like they can try it.
And this I love like the stuff kind of pouring down here.
Yeah, we've oversteeped this, so it's actually going to be really strong, which I really like, actually.
Just pour it like that?
Yeah. Does is one of my favorites. This is not an actual tea. You know, all tea is made from the same kind of leaves. But this is an herbal, which is just a bunch of herbs thrown together. But I still like it.
Wow, that's strong.
Spicy, huh?
But I like it.
Yeah. And it leaves this aftertaste that kind of, you taste
It's like
the spice,
tingly or...
and then later on you kind of taste sweetness. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, that's really nice. So, so you got to a point where you're starting to create all of these changes in your life. Your health is changing, your relationships are changing. You're literally finding time that you had no clue existed a year earlier in your life. You just couldn't conceive of this existing. Then you start to get, sort of like explore a really big evolution in terms of what you're doing. Or tell me how, you know, so right now you write, you know, one of the big things that you do is you write a blog, a world-acclaimed blog called Zen Habits. Where does that start to come to you? How does that come to life?
Yeah, well, I told you I ran a marathon after about a year of making the changes. The way I did that was kind of a blog. I wrote for the sports section of the local newspaper. I volunteered to do a column about doing my first marathon. And it was a freelance column, and it was just every 2 weeks I would write about training for my first marathon. And so for me, the reason why I did that was not to help anybody else out, but as a public commitment. And I said, if I commit in the paper, there's no way I'm not doing that marathon. And of course,
so that was for you.
Yeah, right. It was great for me, but it turned out it helped a lot of other people too. I would get people coming up to me on the street who I'd never met, and they'd be like, "You're the marathon guy."
That's awesome.
So it was like everyone was watching me, but they would also say, "Oh my God, it's inspiring to watch you," you know. And I started running myself, and just a few minutes a day.
Yeah.
And it was so cool to see that influence on other people. And so that really taught me a lot about, you know, public accountability, and you're going to stick to your goals if you do that, but also just sharing your story helps others. Yeah. And so I'm like, when I ran my first marathon, I said, what am I going to do now? My column's over. I need to do something. And I've been reading some blogs on changing my life. You know, Get Rich Slowly was how to get out of debt. Right. I've been reading like Life Hacker to like be more productive, different ones on health. Anyway, so I said, these are great blogs, but I think I can tell the same kind of story. I can share with people what I've been doing and maybe help people, but also get some accountability for myself. So it was an accountability tool for myself and just a way to share stuff with people. But at first it was just like my mom and my wife, you know? And so I'm like, so how the hell do I get any readers?
Right, but that's so important to hear, right? Because so many people will look at you and they're like, okay, he's got, what do you like, 250,000 subscribers now or something like that. And millions of people read you on a regular basis. And they're thinking, well, Leo's got some secret sauce. He's got, like, there's something special.
I do.
And you do. We know that.
I'm not going to tell you what it is.
Well, I know that we secretly, you know, you drug people through the internet so that they're, you know, in a trance with you.
You just let it out.
Yeah, sorry about that. But, you know, I think it's really important for people to hear, like, you start out, it was, you know, 3 people reading for a while, I'm guessing, you know, and then...
Well, one thing I did was email all my friends and family, like, come and read my blog.
Right.
But, you know, I mean, they're busy and, you know, so I think maybe my sister read it.
Right, they'll read it like once or twice to humor you, leave a comment maybe, right?
And I'm like, I don't understand, like, how all these blogs got so many readers. And so I started doing things like leaving comments on other people's blogs and linking to my blog. And I realized later that's kind of a spammy thing to do, but at that time I didn't know that. I started submitting my stuff to like dig.com.
Right, back when Dig was...
thinking that all of a sudden it's going to get real popular, and it didn't. And then I would vote on my own stuff. Right. So I have like 1 vote. It was genius marketing. But so like I was stuck there. I didn't know what worked and what didn't. One thing I learned was connecting with other bloggers and writers is a great thing to do. First of all, because then you start to form a community of people who are making the same kind of changes you are, which is like, you know, writing and sharing things with people, maybe, you know, doing the same things with simplifying their lives or being more productive or whatever. And that makes it something that's fun to do whether you have readers or not. Right. But then the second thing is, then they start to maybe you suggest an exchange of guest posts, and maybe they only have 4 readers too, but you know they might all actually have 50 readers. Then you now have an audience of 50 people that you've just gotten in front of, and those people might start to check your blog out. And,
Right.
and so I would start with just a small group of bloggers that I was friends with and exchanging guest posts, and then we started to get bigger, and I started to like make friends with other people. And another one that I learned was I got a link. I don't even know how they found me, but a link from a bigger blog, and the blog was dumblittleman.com. And at that time, they had 80,000 subscribers, and a link from them was huge. Like,
Right, yeah.
it just all of a sudden my traffic went from like this to like that. I'm like, what the hell's going on? And I found out they linked to me. And then another big blog saw me. It was lifehack.org. And they linked to me because they had seen Dumb Little Man. And then all of a sudden, all these other blogs
It's like
started
the
linking.
pile-on effect, yeah.
So I'm like, that like links from other blogs I realized was huge. But I'm like, why are they linking to me? Like, why do they link to this one post and not all these other posts they did? And so that's when I discovered the list post, which I
The infamous
overused.
list post.
I actually became famous for overusing it, and I've kind of gotten away from that. But actually, the reason why I do lists is because that's how my mind thinks. I start
Right.
to organize things into lists. But it turns out it's also a massively like popular format, and magazines have used it for years.
Yeah.
Newspapers. So I learned the success of that. But what I learned really over time was it wasn't really the list post that was doing it. It was packing a post with massive value that really helps people do something that they want to do. So I shared like my motivation tips, right? Like the
Right.
things that motivated me to make all these changes. I learned a lot about motivating myself because I didn't have that before, and I had to figure it out. And I tried like a ton of things, and I learned what worked, and I shared that, and it was what people wanted. And it wasn't really the list; it was the useful information.
I mean, it's funny because I started, blogging towards the end of the year. You started blogging, stumbled upon your work pretty quickly.
Yeah,
And what struck me about it was two things. One was the list.
a lot of lists.
But I mean, when you use the word value, massive value, and also humility. So you were somebody that, and that's a really tough balance, I think, for a lot of people to strike, which is talking about your struggle and your accomplishments and like these really big things that you've done that a lot of people aspire to do.
Yeah.
But framing them not as being boastful about, look what I did,
Yeah.
but as being like, I'm still in this and I'm struggling. There are other things that I want to do. And this is what I figured out. And if it's of value, if I can be of service,
Yeah.
then I would love to be of service. And that's a balance that you struck so beautifully, I think, from the beginning. And to me, I always thought that was one of the things that really distinguished you. And it's funny because I came at it, I came out of the world of entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
And it was, for me, it was always like, how do you build business? You lead with massive value.
Right.
And humility and service.
Yeah.
So it was interesting because I was looking at what you're doing. I'm like, it's sort of, he's taking that ethic and applying it to this relatively new world at that point, the blogosphere. So it's really cool to see from
Well, that's
outside
interesting
in.
that you said that. I didn't do it on purpose, actually.
No.
But I think it stemmed from some things that I had been learning about. And it wasn't like I was purposely trying to be, humble. But one is, like anything that you do, no matter how great it is, there are people who've done way more. I ran a marathon. So what? There are people who run marathons like every week.
Right.
50 marathons a year. Like that's like nothing to them. People who run 100 miles in a day. So no matter how great you think you are, there's people who've done way more, and so that'll humble you like really quickly.
Right.
And the other thing I learned was, like, no matter how much I've learned, there's still way, way more to learn.
Yeah.
And I think that's even at this point where I've been learning, some I think really cool things for the last 7 years. I'm still at the beginning.
All right, so this is a really interesting thing to explore, though, because I'm like you. I look at the body of knowledge that I don't know compared to what I know, and it's infinitely bigger.
Yeah.
And to me, that's something that lights me up. I mean, that excites me. I love learning, and the fact that I don't know anything compared to what I could potentially know, and even the day that I die, I'll know a small fraction of what
Yeah.
To me, that's something that moves me to want to act and to want to learn more.
Yeah.
For a lot of people, it does the exact opposite.
It just overwhelms
It shuts
you.
them down.
It's
They're
scary.
like, it's just, there's too much. They're saying to themselves, I'll never even know enough to be minimally competent at something compared to the best people out there,
Yeah.
so why bother starting?
Well, I think that's the mistake, is thinking you have to learn it all.
Yeah.
Like there's no, it's obviously impossible. So like, why even worry about that?
Right.
So just to me, it's not really trying to like learn everything, but it's just a matter of curiosity.
Yeah.
You know, and that. So actually, I had someone on Twitter. I asked people like, what's the one change that has helped you the most? And one person's, I really love this philosophy because it matches up with mine, which is that he replaced opinions with curiosity. And I love that because to me, a lot of people get to this point where they think they know something. And when you think you know something, that's when learning ends.
You're done.
You're done.
Yeah.
But if you just think, okay, I might know something, but let's find out more. Maybe it's wrong.
Yeah.
Maybe there's more to learn. Maybe there's a next step. And there always is more to learn. And so that's, to me, if you just start with curiosity rather than like, I think I know it, or I don't need to know it, or there's no way I'm going to know it.
Yeah.
You know, that's a much better place to start. And it's
Totally
fun.
agree.
Like learning new things and trying new things is...
I totally agree.
Yeah.
I'm curious, does this happen to you? This happens to me. And I think, and it's interesting because we used to see this, so, you know, I ran a yoga studio in New York City for a lot of years. And we trained a lot of yoga teachers. And what would happen to them, and this happens to me when I study something intensely, is you come in kind of thinking, okay, I can own this.
Yeah.
You know, it's like a certain body, and then you start to like get into it, and you're like, oh wow, this is way too much. And then you start to get to a point where like, I feel really good. Like I kind of got this dialed in. And then inevitably, if you keep seeking after that point, you fall off a cliff. And you realize like, I know nothing.
Yeah.
But it's almost like this really interesting cycle to me where it's not sort of like a smooth learning curve, but it's like getting more and more confident, feel like I've got some level of mastery. And then it's almost like you get enough mastery and enough comfort with what you know to start to open another door that allows you to see how much you don't know. And like you have to, like you're starting
Then
up
you
this
walk
much
through
bigger
that door.
I mean, me, I do, because
Yeah.
I'm good with that. Like, I want to go there, but that's the door that I think, you know, we're talking about a lot of people just, they run from, or they're like, you know what, I'm good here.
Yeah.
You know, like, I want to be comfortable feeling like I know a fair amount about this. I don't need to go to that next place and drop down and then start over, even though it could potentially bring me to a much greater place.
And you've written a book on it, Uncertainty. But so to me, I mean, that's why I love your book, is because that's the crucial moment.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you're just starting out, you haven't gotten to that place where you're like all confident. You're in this place where you're in this little comfort zone. You know what you're doing, and you don't want to venture out. Or maybe you've gotten that confidence, and then you hit that cliff or that door that's like really scary. And what do you do then? And what you've developed, and I think what I've developed too, is not a confidence that I know everything, but a confidence that even if you dive off that cliff, you're going to be okay.
Yeah.
And I think that's really the crucial thing, is learning. It doesn't matter if I fail. It doesn't matter if I don't know anything. It doesn't matter if I, stumble around in the darkness, not knowing what I'm doing. I'll be okay.
Yeah.
And that's the confidence that you need.
So it's interesting though, right? Because so for some people, you know, there are techniques or strategies or practices that can help get you there.
Yeah.
For other people, I think you're one of them, hitting rock bottom and then seeing that you can actually like crawl your way back and then figure it out and come back from that, I think serves as this experience that kind of changes you, because you're like, okay, if I can do that, I can do anything. So if I step out there and it doesn't work and I crash and burn, it's gonna hurt, but I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Like I'll get through it, I'll be okay.
And also, at that time I didn't know it, in 2005, but at this point I also know that rock bottom is actually not a bad place. Like we think this is the worst place in the world, and I've hit the worst thing in my life, but actually rock bottom is not any worse than being at the top of the cliff, It's like, that's what I'm saying, is like you have confidence that it doesn't really matter where you are.
Right.
You'll be fine. You'll figure things out.
Yeah.
You're not dead, and even if you're dead, it's not the worst thing. The world will go on without you. But so I have just learned that, like, no matter what happens, you'll be okay. You'll be fine. And once you figure that out, like really believe it in your heart, there is nothing that can kill you. I mean, there's failure. It's not going to kill you. You know, not knowing something is not going to kill you. Uncertainty. So that's really the confidence that I've developed. Is I don't know everything. I maybe don't know anything, but I'll be okay.
It's an interesting place to be.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about that though is that so many people look at you and to you as somebody who knows a lot.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting, no, but it is. It's got to be, I mean, how do you, because you know that, you experience it. People put you on a pedestal to a certain extent. I'm curious, how do you deal with that?
I make money off it. No, I mean...
It was a joke.
The truth, I mean, I do.
Right.
That's actually the honest truth is
right.
I make money because people believe I know something, that maybe I don't really know. I mean, you and I, and anyone in the world really makes money through fantasies. We sell a fantasy. People think that I live this life of discipline, of great habits, of peace and simplicity. And the truth is, I'm struggling with all of this stuff just like anybody else. I create habits, but they drop all the time, and I have to start all over or try something else out and be okay with it having failed. I may look disciplined, but there are times when I don't feel like working on it and I don't, or I don't feel like writing and I, waste away my time on the internet.
Right.
I might live a relatively simple life, but there's still complexities that I deal with on a daily basis. So I'm figuring it all out, and people have this fantasy of what I am and what they can be if they follow what I am. And the truth is, it's all BS.
Right.
It's I try my best to disillusion people of that fantasy. Is like you said, I write all the time that I'm struggling with this stuff and I don't know. This is what I think I know so far, and take it or leave it.
And it's interesting, and again, that's one of the things I think endears people so much to you. But it's always interesting to see how one of the reasons I bring this up also is because I think one of the reasons that a lot of people don't do something is, especially something where they'll have to sort of like share their creations or position themselves in a certain way publicly.
Right.
Is because
they create an image.
Right. They don't want to step out there and be sort of like publicly subject to attack or to people misinterpreting who they are and what they stand for, which happens on a regular basis.
It's going to happen.
Right. So
put yourself out there.
Yeah, and it's something you've dealt with, I've dealt with, a lot of people that we both know have dealt with. And I think fundamentally you just have to live your life and try and be out there and be honest. Say, look, I struggle every day.
Yeah.
I'm not a guru. I'm not a sage. I think we have the luxury of having crafted livings that allow us probably more time to think about this stuff than most people.
Sure.
And to write about it and explore it. So that gives us maybe a little bit of more opportunity to really deep dive into it and explore. But that doesn't mean that we're not human. But I think there's a lot of mythology in the world of lifestyles and simplicity and life hacking and spirituality and personal development and business, everything that says you must position yourself as the all-knowing sage if you want to succeed.
Which I think is wrong.
Yeah.
The thing is, like this public image that we try and create either for ourselves or for our business, I mean, it's not real, first of all. But second of all, if you let that image crumble and have cracks and stuff and show the honest reality of things, people like that.
I agree. Yeah.
And they start to trust you because you're honest. And what you and I know is that trust is more valuable than anything else. It's more valuable than getting a click to subscribe or share or buy. Having that trust, you can't buy that. And the only thing you can do is be trustworthy and be honest and be real. And if you have this veneer of this public image that you have, and I'm preaching to the choir here, but hoping other people will hear it, is that is fake, and people can sense that. People have intuition about whether this person is just giving you a marketing pitch or if they're giving you the real deal. And if you give them the real deal, they start to trust you because they know you're sincere. You're not just trying to, get their money, which most people are trying to do online. And if you are one of the few who aren't, you set yourself apart as trustworthy, honest, sincere, and someone who is there to genuinely help them rather than genuinely take their cash.
Yeah.
And you know that. And I think you're one of the best at it. So
I had the great opportunity to sit down with Seth Godin, who we both know, a little while back, and that was one of the things that he said. We were talking about scaling business across all different businesses and the metric that we use. Like, how do you know when you're succeeding? What's the metric you're trying to grow? And he said, for me, he said, what I'm trying to do is scale trust.
Right. Yep.
That's his core, what he's trying to grow. He's like, you grow trust, and everything else falls into place.
I have a metric it's kind of similar, because I don't know how to measure trust, but my metric, it's a binary metric. Instead of trying to get like 100,000 hits or whatever, my metric is, have I helped somebody? And it's either yes or no.
Yeah.
And if the answer is yes, then I've done something good.
Yeah.
If I write a post and it helps one person, if it helps more than one, then great. But if it helps one, and that's, to me, I've succeeded. If all I'm doing is trying to help myself, then the answer is no. I'm not helping somebody, and that's not the kind of thing that I try and do.
Right. So let's bring this back to your personal journey. You have my leg's totally dead here. So you're in Guam, you're building this incredible blog, you're building a big following, you end up getting a book deal, traditional publishing, putting out a book, and it's successful, helps a lot of people, and then you make a really big move with the family.
Oh, yeah.
to
San Francisco. Tell me about this.
Yeah. Actually, we made a bunch of big moves, but that was a huge moving from Guam, and this is the place where my kids were born and raised. Like, this is what they knew, and we talked about comfort zone and not wanting to get out of it.
Yeah.
This is what I want to teach them: is you'll be okay if you get out of that comfort zone.
Right.
And so I felt like we were in this comfort zone, but it was also about another thing we talked about was just creating an environment for yourself that will lead to the lifestyle that you'd rather lead.
Yeah.
So I felt San Francisco was all of that because I had lived here for a few years when I was a teenager. Mm-hmm. My dad was going to school out here. I fell in love with the city, and I'm like, I always wanted to move back and show my wife and kids what it was like. And so we came here. I realized you can't go back. The city's completely different, but I still love it. And it was the scariest thing we had ever done. We sold everything, like all our possessions, basically. We came here with a backpack each. With an addition of, we each had one box, cardboard box that we packed up with personal possessions.
Right.
We each got to have one box and one backpack.
Wow.
The box were shipped later, and we flew over here with just a backpack, no house. We didn't know where we were going to live. I stayed with with my cousin in Alameda, across the bay, and we had this listing of Craigslist places that we wanted to look for. Mm-hmm. So we spent the first week just trying to find a place to go. When we moved in, we had no furniture, and so also on Craigslist, I had no car, and we decided to go carless. So I would go and try and carry stuff to my house. Uh-huh. For some things, I had to rent a guy with a little moving truck to move stuff. But it was here's another thing: we had never lived anywhere besides a tropical place. So we get here, we had a couple blankets and some futons the first night. We're all sleeping in the living room. Right. And it was freezing. I mean, this is San Francisco in the summer.
Oh, which is famous
cold.
Mark Twain quote, right.
Which he didn't actually say, but...
He did?
No, it's one of the... He was quoted for a lot of things.
Oh, that's funny.
He didn't say.
That's a great quote, anyway.
It's a great quote. Still, just use it. Coldest...
Yeah, the coldest winter I ever spent was summer
in San Francisco.
Right?
So anyway, we were freezing, and I'm I woke up in the morning just I was cold. I knew my kids and wife were cold. I'm I've made a huge mistake. And I'm there's got to be a way. And I found the thermostat. I'm wait a minute, maybe there's a heater in this house. I didn't know anything about thermostats or heaters. We're in Guam where we don't have that.
Right.
And I turned it on, and there's this click, the furnace came on, or the heater or whatever. And I found some vents, and hot air started coming out. I'm like, we're saved. This is how like unprepared we were for living here. But anyway, yeah, we learned to make our way. We learned to walk around the city, explore. We rode buses and trains, learned the schedules, and it was scary.
How did the kids sort of like settle into the change?
They were extremely homesick. They missed the family. We had a huge family network. I mean, my wife comes from families of 13 and 11.
Wow.
My dad was from 9. My mom's from 8. So, I mean, these are like, and then all the grandkids. And so this is like huge network on Guam. We come over here with, there's still a few family in the Bay Area, but it's way less. And they were just really homesick, missed everything that they were comfortable with. I mean, their entire lives just completely different.
Right.
Nothing about our lives were the same. And we learned after a few months that you'll be okay. And to me, that was one of the best lessons I've ever taught my kids and myself and my wife.
Yeah.
And now we love the city, and we're really happy to go without a car. And we live a vegetarian lifestyle, and it's just completely different than what we were living on Guam, but we love it. And I get to meet cool people like yourself and Jesse Jacobs here, who just walked in.
Yeah, it's
owner of Samovar.
easier to definitely hook up than when you're in Guam.
Yeah, it was hard working. I mean, in an online world, like, you're kind of connected, but you're also kind of isolated.
Right.
And you and I know this, that connecting in real time and in person is way different.
It's no different, yeah.
And it's great. Like, you need it.
Yeah.
So I didn't go to conferences because it costs like at least $1,000 to fly anywhere. Actually, more like $2,000 to fly anywhere and back to Guam. So I never went to any conferences. I would Skype with people maybe, but didn't meet in person.
Right.
And so that's been a huge change for me, is just being able to meet in person with people I knew online for like years.
Yeah. No, I remember the first time we met. It was great. I was like, wow.
You're a
I get
real
to actually
person.
give him a hug in person. It was great.
There is nothing, and Jesse knows this, there's nothing that can replace like real human
I
connection.
completely agree. We talked about this. We've talked about it a number of times before about just what we're losing, in getting virtual.
There's a blogger I like, an author, Derek Sievers. Do you know him?
Yeah, of course.
He just wrote a thing about
saw that.
being local. You saw
Yeah.
that? And so his thought is like, you either spend your time trying to be local and meeting with people, or being global. And he's done both. He was global, but he never met anyone in his neighborhood. And then he went to Singapore and just tried to meet everybody, and has not been online and not been contributing to the world. And so he's decided he's not going to do local anymore. He's going to be global. And I really like that post. But what I found is what we're doing here, we're connecting in person, which is local. And I connect with other people here. But we're also recording it and putting it out for the world.
Right.
And so you're doing kind of both at the same time.
Yeah, no, I think it's really interesting to mesh them in an intelligent way. And a lot of times you can build relationships that start out in the ether.
Yeah.
But there's nothing like then taking those relationships and making them. There's an energy that happens like when you're in a room with somebody, you can like touch them, have conversations with them.
Yeah.
That isn't replicable. But
I think it's something that's hardwired in us. Like,
I think you're right.
we see
it's like
this
a primal instinct or something.
We see faces, and like in email you don't see a face. A tweet you don't see a face, and so even if you Skype is way better just because you get to see the face. But like being here in the space with somebody and feeling their energy and.
Well, I mean, interesting. This is part of the reason why for this whole project, I'm traveling around, and I could have easily started this out with Skype split screens. A lot of people do that. Would be faster, easier, wouldn't cost me anything.
Yeah.
But it was really important to me as I start to explore, what does it mean to live a good life? For me, a big part of that is sitting down with people, is being face to face. So if it creates more effort, that's okay. And if having this conversation and we can. This conversation, the dynamic, the energy that'll come out of it, we can share something different because you and I will interact differently, and people will perceive it differently. And I think it's a big thing that I I would love to help people just reclaim, what Jesse's created here with places like this is fostering that too.
You're kind of capturing some magic.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to come full circle with you. And the name of the project is Good Life Project.
All right.
When we talk about, when I offer that phrase, to live a good life, what comes up for you? What does it mean to you? What are the pieces?
I think we've touched on a bunch of them here, but one is this positive, genuine human connection. I think there's really nothing that can beat that. And I think a good life, that's like one of the elements that you need. Another one that really motivates me, and we've talked about it, is helping people. Like making money, getting 1 million readers, all that stuff. It's great, but there is nothing better than helping a fellow human being. When you see that, like, it makes everything worthwhile. Like whether you're selling tea, selling fantasies, writing stuff online, like seeing someone else's life improve and get better makes your life get better. And to me, those are like two of the most powerful things that you can have in your life. And then for me, just knowing the things that are most important to me and having those in my life. My family, my wife, some time for exercise and healthy food. I also like to write and create and then read. Those are my main things. Yeah. And if I have those in my life in some kind of mixture, and while I'm helping people and connecting with people, to me that's a good life.
Yeah, I love that. So thanks so much for the conversation. It was great hanging out with you, as always. And I'm Jonathan Fields. My guest today has been Leo Babauta, signing off for Good Life Project.